I kind of got into minimalism out of necessity. I was in college. My life was a mess. I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. My mind and my emotions were a mess. And I just, like, my room was always trash. And so I was at the library one day, and I sort of knew that I wanted to do something about the clutter and the chaos in my heart and my mind and my room. And I saw this copy of Spark Joy by Marie Kondo on the new bookshelf. And I went, you know what? I'm going to check that out. I'm going to see if it works. I took it home. I went through every single step that applied to me as somebody like still living at home in my childhood bedroom. And the crazy thing was that it worked. I finally felt like I had room to breathe in my own space. I didn't have too much stuff cluttering me up and like decreasing the amount of focus I had. And it also gave me some confidence that I could figure out the other things in my life, right? If I had done the work and found the resources to declutter my room, what other things could I accomplish? But if you've ever done a major declutter or followed a system like Marie Kondo's or one of the other ones that's out there, you know that initial decluttering doesn't last. And so that initial declutter definitely set me up on this journey that I'm on now, but it has been a journey. It's been something that I have had to work through for the past 10 plus years to continue improving on and keeping up. And I wouldn't say I have it totally figured out. Just look at the state of my house when I haven't had time or energy to upkeep it, and it gets out of control even to this day. But I've learned a lot along the way, and so today I wanted to share with you my top 5 decluttering mistakes to avoid. Mistake number 1, reshuffling things instead of decluttering. This one is a tale as old as time for me. When I was a kid, I was notorious for, instead of getting rid of things that I owned, I called it reorganizing, but it was really just shuffling everything around in the different storage areas I had in my room in order to store more stuff on them. And I got really good at this as a kid, and I feel like this is still sometimes a trap that I fall into as an adult. I see something, I either don't want to decide what to do with it, or I want to keep it, but I don't have a place for it. And so I just reshuffle things around to try to make room for it. And I may tell myself at the time that I'm organizing, but that's not true organization, because I'm not thinking about functionality. I'm thinking about keeping things. Keeping things is my main goal. And when we allow ourselves this luxury of reshuffling, it gets in the way of actual true decluttering. It means that down the line, we are going to have to do way more decluttering because our space is going to be even more crowded. And it also means that our organizational systems in the meantime aren't working the way that they should. So here's what I recommend doing instead. First of all, do your very, very best to be aware of what you actually use and like, and keep those things. So when you come across an item that you want to reshuffle, you go, oh, it doesn't go here. It actually goes here, and I'm just going to put it here. Oh, wait, there's not room for it there. Take a minute, stop and say, okay, which of these things in the new place that I'm moving this thing to do I actually use and actually like? And if there's anything that doesn't fit, declutter that. A lot of times I feel like it will be the thing that you're moving to the place where it belongs because there's a reason it's not where it belongs in the first place, and that's probably because you don't need it to be as convenient. But if that's not the case, like maybe it's new or whatever, get rid of the things that you use the least and like the least until you actually have space for all the things that fit in that space. And speaking of having room for specific things in specific spaces, mistake number 2 is avoiding putting limits on certain categories of things. My life changed for the better when I limited the number of clothes I was allowed to own. I feel like this might sound like a simplistic example because, I talk about closet decluttering a lot, but honestly, when I first started decluttering, I thought I literally could just keep all of the clothes that sparked joy for me. And so I would hold my clothes, I'd go, oh, yep, this sparks joy. I would put it in the keep pile. And so then I would have a closet full of clothes, a dresser full of clothes, boxes of out of season clothes. And it really was a lot to upkeep for me. As somebody who like, I like my clothes, there's a reason I own them, but I'm not like super into fashion. And that is not like my greatest joy in the morning is not getting dressed. I'm just like trying to get dressed so I can move on with the rest of my day. So I really needed it to be streamlined and simple. So when I finally decided, you know what, I need all my shirts to be together. I need all my pants to be together. I need all seasons to be out at all times. That really made a huge, huge difference for me. And it gave me space to keep things that I enjoy much, much more. And that's really the beauty of putting limits on specific categories of things that you can own, is that you get to decide how much space those things take up. And that can depend on how much you like them, how much you use them, right? Like if you are somebody who like fashion is one of your hobbies, you love it, you have a huge walk-in closet, by all means use that. That's just not me. Like even if I had a huge walk-in closet, I wouldn't want to fill it with clothes. I'd probably like turn it into a cute little reading nook or something. And that's totally fine. That says more about me and my priorities in my life, and the categories that you choose and the limits that you choose will say more about you and the life that you want to live. Just keep in mind that all of us have constraints on space. And so make sure that you are realistic about the amount of space that certain categories can take up. Here are some categories to consider where you will keep these things and where you will store them. Clothing, accessories, linens, blankets, and bedding, toiletries, hobby supplies, kitchen stuff. This may seem like obviously the kitchen, but if cooking is one of your things, you may have an overflow space for the pantry or for little used utensils or things that you use like for Christmas or for canning season or things like that. Sentimental and nostalgic items, reading material, records like old bills and stuff, not necessarily LPs, and electronic devices. There may be a few other categories as well, but just think through the types of things that you own and the space that you want it to take up in your home. And that will really, really help you streamline your decluttering process, because you will know, okay, like I just have these limits that I have created for how much space these particular things that can take up, and I have to declutter so that they fit into those. And of course, you can always change the limits too if you find out that you made a bad decision and you really need more space for, a specific category of things. Just decrease it from one of the others. And mistake number 3 is ignoring our emotions while decluttering. This is one that I try to address a lot on this channel, but it really didn't occur to me that this was happening until I started addressing like other ways that I ignore my emotions in other areas of my life. And I'll be honest, when I first read Spark Joy, like that book that really got me firmly launched into decluttering and minimalism, I was super uncomfortable with the emotional component of it. The actual like part of the title where it says like Spark Joy. I didn't want to be making emotional decisions. I wanted to be making 100% purely logical decisions. And to be honest, like when I first read Spark Joy, I was super duper uncomfortable with the idea of like holding things and feeling feelings and letting that determine whether or not I got rid of them. And I'm still, to be honest, a little wary of 100% emotional methods of decluttering. But I honestly think that that was what I needed. Probably the fact that she forced me to engage my emotions, even if it was really unwillingly, meant that I was actually able to make the progress that I had previously not been able to make when I tried to declutter my things. So I'm grateful for that. And I also feel like for all of us, there are ways that we have to make sure that we are regulating ourselves, listening to our bodies, listening to our emotions, so that we don't burn out on decluttering and so that we also are able to make good, whole decisions. Obviously, I don't think we should make 100% emotional decisions when we're getting rid of things, and I will talk about that in a second, but I also don't think anymore, which I did when I first started with minimalism, that the answer is 100% logic either. There's so much emotion tied up in our things, especially when you're dealing with like sentimental items, or if you're dealing with like scarcity or things like that remind us of who we want to be or who we have been. And any efforts to put off dealing with those emotions may mean that we just hoard the stuff because we don't want to deal with the emotions and we don't want to make the decision. So definitely can't ignore our emotions while decluttering. But mistake number 4 is giving too much weight to our emotions while decluttering, or rather using strong emotions to fuel decluttering, because you can't totally let your emotions run the show either. And I'll tell you what I mean. For the first 5, maybe more years of my decluttering journey, when I was super sad or super angry with myself or just super frustrated by life, I would use that as motivation to go on this big decluttering binge. And at the time, I thought that I was turning something that I didn't like, a negative, into a positive. But what was actually happening was I was punishing myself for the fact that I was feeling these feelings that I didn't like. And that's a whole other thing that probably we don't need to talk about. But the part that I think is relevant is that when I would use those really strong emotions to fuel my decluttering, I always made at least one decision that I regretted. I thought oh, these strong emotions will help me be brave. They will help me get rid of things that I wouldn't normally get rid of. But that's kind of the point. I would get rid of things that it wasn't wise to get rid of. And then I would end up having to spend money to replace those things, or I would just sheepishly take them back out of the donate pile before I donated them and go, oh, I guess I messed up again. And I would feel terribly about myself. And so basically what I'm saying here is you have to have some logic, right? You can't be totally ruled by emotions, but you also can't ignore your emotions. It needs to be a process where you are able to be calm and you are able to do it. Let's be honest, decluttering is a stressful and emotional enough process without adding extra angst into it. And so if you want to make good decisions, you cannot be in a state of emotional overwhelm, and you cannot be in a state of completely shutting your emotions off when you are decluttering. Basically, what I'm saying is regulate first, then declutter. And if you're overwhelmed, give yourself a break, come back later. A little progress is better than no progress. And then the final decluttering mistake that I want to cover is chasing an aesthetic instead of embracing a lifestyle. When I hear the word minimalism, I think of very white, neutral interiors, maybe Japanese inspired, maybe not. There's this very specific vibe that goes with minimalism in my mind. And for a lot of my minimalism journey, I was chasing that. Now, if you've seen any shots of my house, you know that I am no longer chasing that. I'm definitely going for more of a cozy, more of a colorful vibe. But really, what ended up happening was I got married. And my husband loves color. And being around him reminded me of the fact that when I was in middle school, when I was a kid, I also really loved bright colors. I would have all these bright pieces of clothing that I would wear. And just over time, as I gotten older, minimalism was part of this, but so was not wanting to stand out. My clothing choices just became much more neutral, much more dark, much more unassuming. And while there is nothing wrong with a very neutral, calming aesthetic, sometimes I do like a little bit of color. But when I would look at my space and I think about how I wanted to be a minimalist, I would think, no, I have to just embrace neutrals. It can only be neutrals all the time. And that was just one of the pieces of dysfunction I had when I was chasing minimalism as an aesthetic instead of a philosophy or a lifestyle. I also had a lot of other things, I would declutter my space so that it looked spotless, but I wouldn't really think about usability. So sometimes I would be shoving things in places that I wouldn't be able to find them later because I could close the door behind them. And I know that that's probably not true minimalism, but when you're in a hurry or when you're stressed or you're just I can't get rid of anything else, that is sort of what ends up happening when you're chasing the aesthetic instead of the lifestyle. I get really frustrated when my space didn't look like a magazine, which it never did because I don't have magazine money. I felt guilty for wanting to buy things, for leaving things out as I was using them, and generally not keeping my house spotless 100% of the time. And I felt torn about making my home cozy and welcoming because it was hard to do that and also keep it looking like a museum or a hospital, or just really, really decluttered and completely minimalistic. But honestly, a lot of that dysfunction was on me. If you or I are thinking of minimalism as primarily an aesthetic, you're sort of missing the point. You're missing the point that like it's about decreasing your consumption, that is about owning only what you need and freeing up space and time for the things that you love most in your life. And then if you embrace that, if you embrace it as a philosophy, as a lifestyle, as just a habit that you're forming, you can make your home cozy or, modern or whatever other style you want and still be practicing minimalism, because at its core, you understand that it's not an aesthetic, it's a lifestyle. And I do understand the struggle, believe me, and I'm gonna make a video about that, I think probably sometime this fall, about how I am balancing minimalism and coziness in our home. But I was really only able to embrace this specific way of thinking about minimalism when I realized that minimalism is actually focusing on only owning what you need, nothing less, nothing more. Realizing that we are surrounded by overconsumption and really being pushed into overconsumption and not buying it, literally or figuratively. Prioritizing people and experiences over possessions. And of course, being in tune with what you need in this season of your life and giving yourself grace when those seasons and those needs change. My dog just could not wait any longer for her cuddles, so here we are. But anyway, for me, minimalism isn't about chasing an aesthetic or reaching a legendarily low number of possessions. It's about being willing to get rid of the things that I don't need and consistently looking for those things so that my life is filled with things that I love and that make my life comfortable. And when I approach minimalism from that perspective, it is much, much easier to be in it for the long haul, because the pressure is not to be perfect. The pressure is not to get things looking a certain way, but it is to create a life that I truly love through limiting my possessions to only the things that I need. And that is something that I can continue to work toward over my whole life. And by the way, no shade. If you really, really like neutral colors or the minimalist aesthetic, I love that for you. It's just, I've realized it's not really me, and I can do that and still be practicing decluttering, still be practicing minimalism. And that's it. Those are my, or I guess our, top 5 decluttering mistakes to avoid. I hope you have enjoyed this video. And if you're looking for some practical help, I recommend that you check out this video where I talk about some practices that can help you declutter based on what makes it hard for you to declutter in the first place. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Bye! Say bye, baby girl. Bye! Oh, good girl.